So Pokemon is a game that teaches children how to enter into the world of witchcraft, how to cast spells, how to fantasy role play.
What's wrong with fantasy role play?
Some of you can't go to heaven. Why?
He's supposed to be standing atop the green carpeted steps of the altar confessing to his congregation that he has become addicted to prescription painkillers and has taken money from the church coffers in order to finance his habit. 120 Norco filled on November 10th, another 120 filled on November 12th, another 120 on November 17th. Hello lovely people, my name is Emma. Welcome back to my channel and welcome if you are new. It's my birthday. Well, it's my birthday week. If you're watching this on the day that it comes out, it's my birthday tomorrow. It does feel like about 5 minutes since I was saying this a year ago. I have like a strong memory of that, so this feels like a good time to say thank you so much for watching and subscribing and leaving your lovely comments. Can't believe we hit 200k. That's pretty neat. That being said, it is my birthday and I wanted to give myself a little treat. Because you got to give yourself a little treat on your birthday. I found out the other day that the, wah. That meme, you know the meme? So I recently learned that that is from the infamous evangelizing about Pokemon being evil. And I have never seen that video. If you can believe such a thing, I have never seen that original video. And as someone who loves an evangelist going off the walls and is a huge fan of Pokemon, this seemed crazy to me. I brought Pikachu with me to help with this video. I absolutely love Pokemon. I've played every iteration of Pokemon, my favourite being, of course, Pokemon Rumble for the Nintendo Wii. That's not a joke, by the way, that was a great game. I should play that on my gaming channel. Okay, that's another birthday treat that I might indulge in this week. I'm a huge Pokemon fan. I know of this because it was so memeified, and yet I've not really, apart from the wow, I've not really seen the memes. It went viral, I think, because somebody made a song out of it. So I looked it up. I found it very difficult to find, which is something that we'll come back to later. So I did find a video of this, a short part of a sermon by this preacher, Phil Arms, who was a Texas preacher who set up his own ministry. More about that later. I found this thanks to everythingisterrible.com, which is maybe one of my new favorite sites. It's basically a big collection of defunct and difficult to find old media. While I was looking this up, I just typed in like Pokemon is demonic into YouTube or something, and I was admittedly not that surprised to find that the trend of calling Pokemon demonic did not end in the 90s. Now, I do remember now that there was a resurgence when Pokemon Go got big, and if you're an evangelical who doesn't understand technology and you see AR demonic creatures, like, okay, I can sort of understand that, but up to like a month or two ago, at time of recording 2024, people are still talking about how Pokemon is demonic and evil and of Satan. And I thought that was so funny. So to make this like a super treat, I'm gonna do this as a two-parter, right? So today we're gonna look at this classic preacher explaining to us why Pokemon are evil, and we'll have a good laugh at that. I'm going to blind react to it because I've never seen it before. Good fun. And then we're going to look up Phil Arms, and I'm going to show you as much as I can because he's suspiciously absent from the internet and all information about him is very difficult to get hold of, and I thought that was super interesting, so we're going to rabbit hole that. And then next time in another video we will have a look at some of the modern Pokemon haters who are evangelicals and think that it's evil and terrible and demonic. I mean, look at this face. Look at this face and tell me this is evil. I'm talking about Pikachu, not me. Obviously, I'm evil. It's time to be the very best at watching this video about Pokemon being evil.
I said, son, what is that one morning? He said, that's Pokemon. Son, I found out that Pokemon means pocket monster. Pokemon, plural, are incredible creatures that share the world with humans. Each has his own fighting abilities. Some grow and evolve into even more powerful creatures. The children are developing relationships with all these Pokemon creatures.
I wonder if he'd ever seen, like, Power Rangers or Spider-Man or anything. You know, I'm just thinking of, like, equivalent cartoons that were on at the time. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. There's hints of the sort of monstrous or the otherworldly in quite a lot of children's media. Probably part of a grand Hollywood conspiracy to turn our children onto Satanism, actually. Now that I mention it, it sounds obvious.
Little, reclusive, power-filled monsters. But why should they carry the...
Reclusive? Depends on the Pokemon. God, where did tar all Pokemon with the same brush? What a rude guy.
These monsters in their pocket. They say the Pokemon whole effort is to train children how to become the #1 Pokemon master in the world.
I wanna be the very best, like no one ever was.
You follow it through the New Age teaching, you find out that masters are those who take control of spirits in the dark realm. And they tell those spirits what to do.
I missed that. I've obviously not kept up with the 90s New Age teachings. That says that being a master is... Doesn't it depend? Can't you be a master of, like, anything? I'm a master. I just realized that that's what happens if you get a master's degree. You're a master of something. I'm a master! Oh, this is a really exciting day for me. The New Age teaching says that being a master is controlling spirits in the dark realm. What the fuck is the dark realm? I feel like you need so much background lore to understand what Phil is talking about.
So Pokemon is a game that teaches children how to enter into the world of witchcraft, how to cast spells, how to use psychic phenomena, how to put to work supernatural powers against their enemies, how to fantasy role play. Pokemon World.
How to do it's like everything that you understand a fringe, weird evangelical of the 90s would fear. How to do witchcraft and summon demons and blah, blah, blah. How to fantasy roleplay. What? What's wrong with fantasy roleplay? I don't understand.
The world is a world of the demonic, of the satanic. But while you might not take it quite seriously, I assure you that demons take it quite seriously.
Demons are famously deeply serious creatures. I would know.
Takes it quite seriously. Your children need to know there's a devil and he hates them and he wants to ruin their life. There was even a couple of reports where children had been stabbed by other children over Pokemon cards. Do you remember the Dungeons and Dragons game of the 80s where children, young people even ended up killing themselves because it was a role-playing game? Our kids are...
No, of course. The same people who think Dungeons and Dragons was evil think Pokemon was evil. It's just whatever the next generation's thing is, right? Like, everything fun, basically. You won't be surprised, and I'll show you this in a minute, but you won't be surprised to know that I found, when I was looking up Phil Arms, I found that he is also anti-dancing and rock and roll. Anything fun that young people enjoy is the devil.
They're going out in gangs on the streets and they're so used to killing each other in their fantasy games and on their video screens and blowing each other away and blowing each other up that when they walk down the streets and they pull out their .45 and they pump some friend full of bullets, they kind of think in the back of their mind, well, they're just going to, we'll turn off the machine and they'll get up and they'll be there tomorrow and I'll shoot them again.
It's called respawning. You know what would be a great solution to that problem? If the children didn't have access to 45s. This kind of conservative US person, and this continues to this day, will blame anything and everything but guns for gun violence. Like, maybe there would be less gun violence if children couldn't get a hold of guns. Just a thought. Also, there's not... Like, this might sound stupid, but there's not guns in Pokemon. It does feel like anything on, I guess maybe these sermons were direct to VHS. I think that's correct. I'll look it up and see what I can find, and if you know better, correct me in the comments. But I guess it was easier to just kind of say whatever, because, like, you can't just, if this was like a live TV thing, you couldn't just say children are shooting each other up in the streets as a result of Dungeons and Dragons and Pokemon. To pretend there's like an actual wave of violence spreading out of Pokemon and Dungeons and Dragons is just straight up a lie, and it feels kind of crazy that was able to be said unchallenged in this environment with this audience of people going, this all sounds right to me, and why would I question it? You're my pastor. That's why people like this are so dangerous. Let's continue.
Again, it's just a game. To which I respond, Russian roulette is just a game.
Well, the thing is... I'm sorry. I mean, it is a game. But the thing is, Russian roulette is a game that involves a gun and real bullets. And the point of the game is the threat to life. Pokemon is a trading card game where you're little piece of paper beats a different little piece of paper. Not really a fair comparison. Imagine Pokemon playing Russian roulette. Oh my god. Just Pikachu. The little... No, it's bad. Stop.
Distinguish between fantasy and real. Listen, I can't stress this enough.
The only one who can't distinguish between fantasy and real here is you, is Phil. He's the one that's like, you're playing a game called Pocket Monsters and therefore you're connecting to the dark realm and controlling spirits and learning psychic powers. That's the man who can't tell reality from a video game.
How that everything in life is real. Everything. I assure you, what your children watch, what you watch affects you radically.
Radical. See, he has watched Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. It does all affect you. He's a radical rat.
People here today, they can't get saved. Some of you can't go to heaven. Why? What you do with your brain has a direct correlation to where you're going to spend eternity.
I had no idea. All these years, I've never known what that was in relation to. It's him telling his congregation that some of them can't be saved because they've watched, like, cartoons with violence or demons or something. That's so fucking funny. You can't go to heaven. Why? Because you watched them Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. That's so fucking great.
You know, the media in this country, whether it's, listen, rock music, whether it's...
I told you.
The perverted primetime programming and cable programming and the movie industry, whatever.
The movie industry. I've never heard it said before. I love accents. Accents are so funny.
Now the internet.
Wow, that was beautiful. The internet, the cartoons, the media industry is ruining our children's lives. Some of you won't get saved. Why? Oh, it was everything that I wanted it to be. And more. Oh, hang on a second. I'm getting a call on my Rotom phone. Hello? It's today's sponsor. Geology. I choose you. Geology is a 30-time award-winning hair, body, and skincare brand with over 10,000 5-star reviews. They're easy to use, easy to understand, really easy to stick to routines that deliver you actual good results. I've been using Geology for months now for my skincare. I really, really like it. It's not just effective and nice, it's unscented, which I love, but it's also completely idiot-proof. You take this 30-second diagnostic quiz, you tell them about your skin and your goals, and the team of dermatologists will design a personalized routine just for you. So I have this regimen number 20. Everything comes with these little cards. The back of it has all the science stuff. You can also see that it's vegan and cruelty-free. It tells you exactly what all the ingredients are, what the active ingredients actually do and how they work, the percentage that they make up, and then my favorite part, it tells you exactly what to do and when. I have my morning routine, I have my night routine. Not only that, but the products themselves have these little numbers on them. It really is completely idiot-proof. You can't get the order wrong, you can't forget something. So I know at a quick glance, my morning routine is number 1 face wash, and I can use this cute little circle, which I also love, to work out exactly how much I need to use for my face. Then I've got my brightening formula is number 2, easily peasily. And finally, 3 and 4, my tone control morning cream. Done. Bosh. Simple. Use code EmmaThorne70 at checkout for that 70% off your skincare trial set. You're getting over $49 in products for just $15. Plus, you get up to 50% off additional add-ons. I love using Geology. It's a really great deal. You should absolutely check it out using my link down below. Plus, Geology is now available at Target and Amazon. Check it out there using the link down below. Thanks very much for listening and to Geology for sponsoring this video. I mean, what is there to say about this? Let's have a quick look at him chatting about how dance, because he touched on how rock and roll is evil there, which is so beautifully, like, it's at certain points, I guess because this is the 90s. Actually, this next one is from 1989, his anti-dancing rant. But it is so funny to watch this now and be like, man, these guys are just like the lamest stereotypes of themselves. And it's so funny and kind of funny in like a not really ha-ha and more like an oh dear, that's worrying kind of way, that there are modern evangelists that are taking cues from this kind of person that probably grew up watching these VHS tapes of Phil Arms and like have internalized that fucking bizarre inability to tell the difference between fiction and reality and then preach about that. Very weird. So let's just listen to his thoughts on dancing and rock and roll real quick.
We talked about the anesthetic effect that the hyper overstimulation of the body's glandular functions undergo when they are submitted to certain types of activity and certain types of music. In fact, this secular article out of the Houston Post came out the other day called, it was entitled Lambada, called Threat to Health. Lambada is the latest dance. It is a sexual dance.
It's a sexy dance. Okay, I'm sorry. So hold on. Certain types of dancing and music, the types that Phil doesn't like, have a physiological effect. I mean, music can make you feel things. So that's true. Lambada is a dance from Brazil. It became internationally popular in the 1980s, especially in the Philippines, Latin America, and Caribbean countries. It's adopted aspects of dances such as foro, salsa, merengue, Mexique, never heard of this one, carimbo, and Bolivian saya. Lambada is generally a partner dance. Ah, no wonder if it's got like elements of salsa and stuff, and it's a partner dance, then no wonder my dude hates it. Are you not allowed to do a sexy dance with your wife? Or you're like betrothed or whatever? Like if you have to be chaste before marriage and that's the threat to young people, then can't married couples do lambada? Like, so very weird.
It's nothing but having sex with your clothes on to music. But anyway,
it's nothing but having sex with clothes on to music. He'd love that. He'd fucking love that. That's his fucking fantasy spilling out into reality.
It is an activity that men use, that scripture said, or that article said, for amusement. It's interesting to note that the Greek word...
Can man not tell the difference between an article he's just read and biblical scripture? Okay, so your man doesn't like dancing, he doesn't like rock and roll, he doesn't like cartoons, video games. Anything fun that the young people are doing is bad because demons. And some of y'all won't go to heaven. Some of y'all can't be saved. Some of you can't be saved. This dancing one is especially funny to me because I'm rehearsing for a musical right now of Footloose, which is all about the town of young people who are forbidden to dance. It's against the law to dance. It's just a very funny alignment of things in my life right now. So thank you, Phil. That was great. So naturally, when I was finding these videos, I looked up Phil Arms on Google because it's 2024. That's what you do, and I found fuck all. Like just nothing. There's just nothing. Phil Arms. You got these videos. You got videos about him. And then his books, which do sound funny. He had one called Pokemon and Harry Potter, A Fatal Attraction, which sounds like the title of a fan fiction. I fucking love that. Otherwise, it's very hard to really find anything about him. He's not got like a Wikipedia page. Like, I was sort of torn because I was like, okay, well, he was preaching in the 80s and 90s on, like, you know, to his local Houston church and then selling VHS tapes, so I guess that makes sense. But he went viral, like, a couple of times. Viral enough that surely there would be, like, some wiki somewhere would have at least an about page, but no, nobody seems to have done that, and I guess that's because there just isn't that much information out about him. So, as you can see, his website is gone. Phil Arms Ministries is gone. I did also find here on this Open Corporates database of the corporate world, I found Phil Arms Ministries, the non-profit registration, and its status is involuntarily dissolved. It looks like it was involuntarily dissolved twice. I'm not exactly sure what that means or how that works. But it's had a couple of different trading names. Phil Arms Ministries, the Peacemaker Ministries. In 2006, we have this notice of forfeited rights for non-filing of periodic report, and then the involuntary dissolution finally in 2007. So that's pretty interesting. His ministry was forced to shut down, forced to dissolve for not filing his tax, I presume. That's what that means. Somebody who knows more about fucking business and tax and shit can enlighten us in the comments, pretty please. Thank you, love you. It's my birthday, nearly. So, and look at Pikachu. He wants to know. So his website gone, most stuff gone. I had a look at the Wayback Machine. If you've never used it, the Wayback Machine is like an internet archive. People snapshot websites at different times. So we have this kind of saved collection of websites at different points in time. So this website is gone now, but you can see it's been snapshotted at all these different times. So if I go back to, say, 2007 here, there was a snapshot on August the 2nd, 2007. Okay, maybe we should go a little bit later just to see maybe a slightly more browser-friendly, 2024 browser-friendly website. Here we go. Here he is. So this was Phil Arm's website. What? It's almost Christmas again? I selected February, so I guess they didn't update the website very much at this point, even then. You got a massive donate button, of course, his latest book about Satan, the man who would be God. So this is what Phil's website says about him, which is just about the only information that we can get about him is on his own website, so take it with a pinch of salt. Phil Arms grew up in West Texas. His dynamic Christian mother raised her 6 children in the local church. Oh no, Phil did not commit. I always wonder how much of this is true. When they say yes, I was raised very religious and blah, 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 but I was the one that didn't like religion and then I came back to it because I had an amazing meeting with Christ. I'm always a little bit skeptical but that's true. Apparently, so he says, he didn't commit himself to Christ during his younger years and he chose to join himself with the subculture of the 60s and 70s in Houston, Texas. You know what that means? Fucking sexy dancing, demon cartoons. Can he even be saved? After his life was going nowhere, he finally turned to God. Immediately after his conversion, he began a ministry on the streets of Houston, Texas, witnessing to those in need of Jesus. In his opinion, I guess.
And you two motherfuckers need Jesus.
After spending 15 years in the ministry of full-time evangelism, Phil and his wife Suzanne felt God strongly urging them to start a local church in the Houston area. I bet a lot of people in the Houston area have felt that urge from God. For 14 years, they witnessed a continual powerful move of the Spirit of God as it touched thousands of lives and homes. And then at some point, they were forced to dissolve the ministry by the state of Texas. It doesn't say that in the page. And then he was a guest on various radio and television programs. Again, if this was the thing that gets me, right? If he was enough of a sort of known evangelical to be on TV shows and radio shows with other people, why is there nothing about this man online? It's creepy. Let's have a look at the doctrine page. The future. We believe in the personal, visible, bodily return of Jesus Christ to earth. The bodily resurrection of the unjust to judgment and everlasting punishment in the lake of fire. What a wholesome, sweet take on spirituality. It's just so horrible. It's just such a horrible thing to believe. Most things, most religions, most beliefs, I'm happy to live and let live. But that some people are comfortable believing that, if not some, then most of the people they know will be punished eternally in eternal torment, and they're happy to worship the person responsible for that, that is fucking crazy. I don't like that. I don't respect that. I know that a lot of people can't help that belief because they've been brought up on fucking Phil Arms VHSs, but that as a belief is just horrible. I can't see anything pleasant about that in the slightest. It's horrendous. There's a donate page, obviously. Okay, let's go back. The latest one is 2021. That seems surprising. Let's see what this is. Oh, redirecting to Life Reach Ministries. That's a little bit of a dead end, but at least we got to see Phil's website. So then, yes, I found this blog page about Phil Arms, talking about things like spiritual abuse and stuff like that. These pages are largely also gone. So there was this Houston Press article, which is gone. However, we have the Wayback Machine. In Arms' Way. Phil Arms once saved Ron Garner from a life of sin. Garner tried to return the favor when confronted with evidence of the preacher's drug use, but Arms viewed it as just a Judas kiss. His what now? By Lauren Kern. Phil Arms is in bad shape as he takes the pulpit of Houston Church on the morning of Sunday, January 9th. He shifts his weight back and forth from his right leg to his left, sips from a glass of water and dabs at his face with a white handkerchief. I have a problem, he begins. In fact, several this morning. One is an abrasion on his right eye that, he says, has him weeping all morning. Another is that his voice is going out. On top of that, he feels ill. But Phil Arms' real problem this morning is more spiritual than physical. He has been accused of sinning against the church, and that finger-pointing has doused the preacher's usual hellfire and brimstone style. This morning he's supposed to be contrite. He's supposed to be standing atop the green-carpeted steps of the altar confessing to his congregation that he has become addicted to prescription painkillers and has taken money from the church coffers in order to finance his habit. That's a pretty insane story that I am surprised not to be able to find elsewhere. This is from 2000. 3 days earlier, Arm's right-hand man, Associate Pastor Ron Garner, and 2 other staff members confronted the church leader with these accusations, asking him to repent and resign his position. Garner, with the help of Arm's wife, had spent more than a month gathering evidence against his boss. On this morning, he was prepared to address the church body himself, but Arms had insisted on speaking. This was to be expected. Arms rarely let the associate pastor preach much anyway. I've been taking pain relievers, Arms tells his followers. That after using them over a long period of time, as all of them do, they begin to lose their effectiveness, which necessitates an additional one in order to compensate for the first one or the second or the next that isn't working. As for the alleged theft, a subject that he introduces with, incidentally, a side note, Arms says the long-standing operating procedure is that he pays back any unaccounted-for petty cash at the end of each year. That's it, no tears, no pleas for forgiveness, no Jimmy Swaggart I have sinned moment of truth. Why should there be? To hear Arms tell it, he has some health problems and may have taken too long to pay back a few dollars of petty cash. A member of the crowd shouts out, "Thank you for being so honest," and the flock bursts into spontaneous standing applause. And then Ron Garner is talking about his experience hearing Phil Arms preach. He had that fiery delivery and he was passionate about what he was saying, remembers Ron. That's why people are drawn to cults. Interesting comparison to make? I mean, Jim Jones was passionate about what he was saying. And these people are sick and tired of religion, dead stuff. They wanted to get with somebody who believed something, even though it was totally wrong. I think that was the draw. The Garners immersed themselves in Euston Church, attending every service, getting saved, and even giving up music. 'Cause your man hates music. That's the devil's stuff. Ron started working for Arms full-time in 1992 as the praise and worship director. So in 1996, Ron was elected to replace a deceased member of the board of directors for Phil Arms Ministries, the church's non-profit umbrella organisation that Arms had started in the early 70s. The one that was, I assume, shut down in 2007. They were happy, they were making a good living, blah, blah, blah. So when Arms asked Ron to quit teaching his Sunday school class after it got too popular, Ron agreed. Can't have anyone upstaging. Wah! Can't be upstaging that. When Arms made Ron squat down in his photos so the pastor would look taller than the associate pastor, Ron dutifully slumped his shoulders and bent his knee. Man's got serious ego problems. Arms was weird. Sheila and Ron recognised that. But prophets of God are allowed to be a little strange. Sheila describes their unquestioning faith in Arms as the fog. The entire congregation was shrouded by it to some degree. That's why, the Garners say, churchgoers often gave Arms their pain pills to ease his migraines. It was an honour to be asked to help the pastor, to be closer to he who was closer to God. Ironically, it was those who got close to Arms who began to question his methods. The Garners claim that twice in the late 80s and again in 1994, Inner Circle staff members confronted Arms about financial discrepancies, drug addiction, or both. Laverne Jordan, the associate pastor who the Garners say confronted Arms about his drug addiction, refused to talk to the Houston Press about his reasons for leaving the church in 1994. According to Sheila, Arms explained the flurry of false accusations with the line, "I'm so godly that the devil is trying to take me over." Arms always won the conflicts. The accusers left the church destroyed and disgraced. In retrospect, the Garners think this was because the accusers didn't have enough evidence to support their claims. So once they got close enough to begin to see the truth, they vowed they would not make the same mistake. Ron's suspicions started in 1998 when he was helping Arms build his house, a 2-story country colonial affair for which, he points out, Arms borrowed $359,000 from the ministry to finance. Let's just have a quick look at the inflation calculator. That was in 1998. According to the inflation calculator, I'll put this on screen for you, according to the inflation calculator, that would be $690,575.04 today. So his claims about petty cash, he was borrowing from the church almost $700,000, the equivalent of that today. $359,000 to finance his home, his personal home. Fucking dodgy! Ron noticed that Arms was under a lot of stress from working on 2 major projects. He was acting more strangely than usual and making frequent but short trips out to the water hose. Was he just thirsty? What Ron saw reminded him of the pill poppers he had seen in his days as a musician. A short time later, Arms' wife Suzanne came to Ron for counselling. She was concerned about her husband's drug use. In fact, Ron says she had been trying to get him to quit taking painkillers for years before she finally decided she needed help. Arms had begun preaching erratically, manipulating scriptures for his own purpose and directing his sermons at his wife. In the meantime, Sheila, who was working for the church as well, was being asked to give Arms increasing amounts of cash from the account for the in-church sales of Arms' religious tapes and books. At first, she gave it without thought. This is a very lucrative business, she says. I fucking bet it was. With most of the congregation tithing 10% of their incomes. It's such a cult! The church was, according to Sheila, taking in between $18,000 and $20,000 a week just from offerings. Plus, there was income from Arms' tapes, TV appearances, books, newsletters, and radio shows. The $200 or $300 a week she says he was asking for wasn't that noticeable. But soon, the money was flowing out of the account faster than it was coming in, and Sheila asked Suzanne, the main bookkeeper, what to do when there wasn't any more money to give to the pastor. Sheila says Suzanne didn't even know about the account, let alone the weekly cash disbursements. This is interesting. Suzanne declined to comment. The Arms' attorney, Brett Shine, doesn't deny that Phil Arms borrowed from the account, but says that it didn't occur on a weekly basis. He shifts the blame to Sheila Garner for failing to keep detailed records of the disbursements. It wasn't the preachers. It was, Your Honor, it wasn't my client's fault for taking the money. It was the person he was making him give it that didn't, write down the numbers good. Didn't write down the numbers proper, Your Honor. When Ron and Sheila put their heads together, they realized they might have a bigger problem than they thought. Still, they needed more evidence before they could accuse an elder of wrongdoing. Suzanne made copies of her husband's office and desk keys, and Ron and Sheila began a reconnaissance mission. They're like spies, like cult spies. It's so cool. These guys were super brave as well. If you remember how, if you think about how these kind of groups function and the fact that everyone who had accused Arms of anything in the past had just been, quietly removed from the church in disgrace. It's a really brave thing that they were doing. Under cover of night, they entered Arms' private office on November 30th, 1999 and unlocked the bottom file drawer behind his desk. In it, they found what they describe as a menagerie of pharmacy bottles and medications, including 25 empty bottles of a drug called Norco, a version of the highly addictive pharmaceutical narcotic hydrocone. They found pharmacy receipts for prescriptions filled on dates that were dangerously close together. 120 Norco filled on November 10th, another 120 filled on November 12th, another 120 on November 17th. The drug cost almost $100 for each order. They took pictures, photocopied the receipts, and decided to return the next night. The next day, there was another pharmacy receipt for another 120 pills. They checked the drawer and tracked his drug use for the next 35 days. On December 7th, the Garners found a yellow legal pad on Arms' desk with notes they claim were evidence of his addiction. It also delineated his 3-step plan to go to 3 different pharmacies and the alias Robi, or Robbie, that he had used on some of the prescriptions. Another sheet of paper was titled Daily Plan and showed that on July 1st, 1999, Arms was taking 75 to 78 Norco pills a day and supplementing Ultram, a newer and as yet unscheduled synthetic narcotic. So he was planning to cut down the number of pills he was taking over time. But judging by the number of pills the Garners saw appearing in and then disappearing from Arms' desk drawer in December, if the summer cutback plan had worked at all, it hadn't lasted. Hydrocones made the news many times in the past few years as the drug that sent celebrities like Friends star Matthew Perry and Green Bay Packers quarterback Brett Favre into rehab. According to the Drug Enforcement Agency, there is mounting evidence that hydrocone is just as dangerous as a Schedule II drug. Hydrocone is the most abused narcotic drug in Texas. Arms declined to comment directly to the press about his use of hydrocone. Through Shine, Arms admitted to taking too much medicine, but not 78 Norco pills a day. His lawyer also asserts that the pastor never obtained the drug illegally. But on April 10th, the DEA arrested James Poindexter, the pharmacist for Safeguard Pharmacy in Katy, a drugstore where the Garners claim Arms filled some of his prescriptions. Poindexter was charged with 2 counts of manufacturing and delivering a controlled substance. According to the DEA, Safeguard Pharmacy was ranked 8th in the nation in terms of moving the drug hydrocone. While the Garners were checking out his finances and sneaking into the office at night, Suzanne Arms hired an accounting firm to look into the church's finances. John A. Braden and Company reviewed the cash deposits into the church fund and compared them with the giving records for the period of June 1998 through December 1999. Their report to the board of directors indicates that the giving records exceeded the deposits made. In fact, the report says $41,805 was given to the church and not deposited. In a sworn affidavit, church office manager Ann Brown alleged that Phil Arms directed her to give him cash from the church offerings that had been entered into the giving records but not yet deposited into the bank account. From early November to the end of December, Brown claims to have given Arms in excess of $12,000. Ron presented this evidence to Arms, assuming that it would kind of trigger, it would be like an intervention, that it would trigger him to repent and want to change and seek help and maybe step down from the church for the time being. I guess he was hoping where he couldn't access the church finances and so on. Arms's initial reaction was to try to smooth things over. So, in accordance with 1 Timothy, Ron brought in witnesses to the accusation, Bob Francis and Jim Miller, 2 men who worked in the church. When Arms realised he couldn't keep this quiet, he called in some support of his own, his lawyer. What baffled Ron the most was that Arms asked for 5 of his pill bottles back. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of closed-door meetings and confusions of facts. Arms gave his explanations and denials from the pulpit and took a sabbatical to go in for some tests and get healthy. He appointed his brother, a lifelong friend, and the friend's associate pastor to be interim ministers to prevent Ron from taking power. 10 days after his confession, Arms took the pulpit again. He updated the congregation on his medical condition, apparently God had inhibited any liver damage, and wrote a post-dated check for the missing $41,805. He said that there was no way he would have personally procured that kind of money for anything he's ever done, but that he would take personal responsibility for having done it, just in case. I definitely didn't do it, but I'm going to take responsibility for it anyway, in case the law comes after me. And because I'm such a nice guy. No amount of lawyering could have placated Jim Miller, who rose from his seat in the crowd and said, "I will not stand for more lies." Taken aback, Arms threatened to have the dissenter removed. In a passively resistant protest, Miller threw himself on the green-carpeted steps below the pastor and prayed for him to repent. From the altar, he pointed out that Arms' repayment of the money didn't negate the fact that he stole it, and this sparked shouts for truth and repentance throughout the congregation. Finally, Suzanne Arms took to the stage to help her husband defend himself, but just ended up giving the crowd more of the blood they wanted. Yes, he took many drugs, he's confessed that. Yes, he took money and he shouldn't have. It was drug-driven. So he finally resigned, and then the Garners were essentially forced to resign by, the church ministers as well, and they were essentially smeared. When Arms left Houston Church, he didn't leave empty-handed. As the congregation realised during the scandal, Houston Church was a mere outreach program of the non-profit organisation run by Arms and his wife. Phil Arms Ministries owned the church building, the land the church purchased for expansion, the bank accounts, everything. Houston Church was never its own legal entity, and because the church is non-denominational, it can seek no help from a higher religious authority. It seemed that if no one wanted to play by Arms' rules anymore, he could just pack up his toys and go home. All the money that the congregation had tithed to the church over the years, they had actually donated almost directly to Arms' ministry. Wow. So that's a huge fucking story. It's crazy to me that that's not everywhere when you look up Phil Arms. It should come up with, like, disgraced pastor accused of this, that, and the other. So here's another blog post by a couple that attended his church. My husband and I had just gotten out of Houston Church, led by an internationally known minister, Phil Arms, who was for years on radio and TV. What we noticed at first, but didn't think a lot about, but should have, was the lack of elders and deacons. Phil did have a prayer council, but it was basically people who rubber-stamped almost anything he wanted to do. Another thing we noticed was there was not a published church directory, nor was there any public financial statements made available to members on any regular quarterly, yearly, or as-requested basis. Phil demanded unquestioned loyalty and obedience from all his church members, threatening to shun members who didn't agree with him, voice their opinions in opposition to his, or heaven forbid, merely asking questions or clarification on any issue. As time went on, his behaviour became more and more erratic. He would preach, then practically run off the stage before anyone could talk to him. He would then come to dinner with the few of us that knew him better and appear to be almost drunk. He seemed very out of it. No one suspected anything until much later. As we were involved in the church and performing labour-intensive tasks, Phil became very rude and obnoxious, condescending, and incredibly hostile. Some of the things he would say were downright inappropriate for any man to speak to a woman, much less a pastor. When we tried to make an appointment to make things right, or apologise for what seemed to offend him, even though he was clearly the one in the wrong, he played hard to get, making it almost impossible to make any type of appointment with him. Later, after writing letters and trying to make some semblance of sanity out of the situation, I began receiving hostile, aggressive letters threatening shunning and dismembership from the church body. It's a cult! It's a cult. It was a cult. After a couple of days, we left town to work out of state. We learned when we returned that a week after praying this prayer, this woman prayed to the Lord to help her understand, figure it out, you know. After praying this prayer, the youth minister began noticing that a man would come in every week with a package under his arm, walking past the church secretary, and go without knocking into the pastor's office. The youth minister began praying that God would reveal what was going on, and felt very strongly this pastor was on drugs, which we know to be true because Phil Arms admitted it, the Garners investigated it, and his wife went to Ron Garner concerned about his drug abuse. So we know that that's true. After confronting a couple of other associate pastors with this revelation, together they confronted the pastor's wife, and she agreed to help them put together an evidence package. And this lines up with what we read in the Houston Press. The associate pastors all agreed to resign as a stipulation by Phil for his willingness to resign himself. Why this was a stipulation, I'll never know. I do know that pride, control, and manipulation were key components of Phil's ministry, and he was very well versed at manipulating affairs. He did check himself into the hospital for a couple of weeks, but he never did confess his sin to the congregation. This in turn caused rumours and infighting within the body, causing the church to disband. Sadly, we didn't realise this was the third time this situation had occurred. They've also written a list of articles and talked about characteristics of abusive churches and abusive leaders. Here's another blog by somebody from the Houston church talking about how much money they raised for Phil, the $360,000 for a building. They said they were never told what it was for. We were never told the exact amount. We are supposed to take it on faith that Phil is ethical. Obviously, we know now that it was for his own personal house. Talks about the pastor being rude and offensive about people, both in front of them and behind their backs in the church. There is also the problem with the out-of-the-pulpit behaviour and verbal abuse that is, of course, supposed to be understood as just joking. It's one of my least favourite things. You can just say whatever awful thing you want and then go, it's just a joke. So yeah, turns out a lot of people had significant problems with Phil Arms and his ministry. He was essentially a cult leader and manipulated everything when it wasn't going his way, threatened people first with shunning and dismemberment, and then actually shunned and dismembered. Dismembered? No, he wasn't chopping their arms and legs off. Like disfellowshipped. I've forgotten the appropriate word for this specific situation, but essentially disfellowshipped people from his church if they were troublemakers in the eyes of, the leader, Phil Arms. I think it's so crazy that a man like that, a spiritual leader turned cult leader who had the scandal. Everything came to light, including his theft of church funds or misappropriation of church funds to fund building his own house, but also his drug abuse that he had been struggling with, lying about and keeping from people, and as a result the church kind of just fell apart. And there's just nothing about that anywhere on the current internet. It's crazy to me that you don't look him up and it's not disgraced drug abusing pastor who stole church funds goes viral for funny Pokemon sermon. It's crazy that we have this Pokemon video about him and nothing else. It's like they've managed to I'm not saying this is a big conspiracy, him and his fellow church goers wiped all this from the internet. I just think it's interesting and kind of crazy that information isn't easily available. So here it is in video form. Hooray! Let me know what you think down below, because I found this such a rabbit hole. I was like, this will be a silly little treat where I watch a funny video with a pastor talking about Pokemon, and maybe we can talk about Pokemon a bit. We didn't end up talking about Pokemon that much. Remember to subscribe so that when I do the next Pokemon video in a couple of weeks, we can delve into all of the, yokai and the spirits and all of that cool information, the fake, the satirical Satanist interview that some evangelicals didn't realize was satirical. We'll talk about all that in a future video, so do subscribe. Yeah, it turned out to be a deep dive detective job on a former evangelical cult leader. What a wild ride it is. What a fun time we have here on YouTube. Let me know your thoughts. If you know anything else, sometimes people find these videos because they were involved or they know someone who was involved. If you have any info or you just have a take on this, then do let me know. Don't forget to give this video a cheeky like, leave a cheeky comment. Do remember to check out my gaming channel at Little Duck Gaming. Maybe sometime soon I will play some Pokemon Rumble. There's actually already some Pokemon videos on my gaming channel, if that's what you really want to see. If you do enjoy what I do here and you would like to support this channel, especially because it's my birthday, you can become a channel member right here. You get some silly little emotes and comment priority. The best way to support this channel is via the Patreon, patreon.com/EmmaThorneVideos. With that, I must give a big old shout out and a thank you to my giant chickens and colossal quackers over on Patreon, especially Conla. God damn it, Conla. Most importantly, make sure you have yourselves a very lovely week. And I will see you really soon. And I'll be a year older, because that's how time works.